Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto had the Byakugan, part 2, subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. I heard about your defeat of the Inuzuka boy in class today, Hiashi stated, as Naruto took his place at the dinner table. Naruto's look could be described as somewhere between sheepish and shocked. From what I hear, he got in a serious hit, Hiashi continued, something about knocking you onto your back. Hi, Hiashi-sama, Naruto replied, he attacked me as I was unsealing his tenketsu. Hiashi took a sip of his tea, as if waiting for Naruto to continue. Iruka-sensei had ordered the match to stop, but I was in the middle of an attack at the time. When I finished, my opponent had been completely disabled, but when I unsealed his tenketsu, he attacked. To avoid him attacking me again, I finished the match with a physical version of one of our style's finishing moves, Naruto clarified. Yes, I heard about that one, Hiashi confirmed, and from what I hear, it completely broke through his defense. Hi, Hyuga-sama. By now Hinata and Hanabi had joined the two at the table, and, while Hinata had been there and easily assumed what the two were talking about, Hanabi was completely confused. What did I just miss? The younger girl asked, still a little confused, something about a finishing move turned physical. Just small talk, Hiashi informed his youngest, Naruto was filling me in on the details of his spar today. Hinata smiled back at the thought of the spar, she hadn't seen Naruto that happy in a long time. Remember, Hinata, Hiashi continued, snapping the young woman out of her thoughts, we have sparring practice in 2 hours. Hinata almost gulped visibly, she knew today's spar was not going to be a pretty sight. What is this, a joke? Hiashi declared angrily, as Hinata tried to pick herself up. They'd only been fighting for a few minutes, and Hinata already looked like she was shot. Hiashi had made the day's sparring session much more intense than the others, and he was sorely disappointed with his daughter's inability to cope. This is pathetic. He spat, scolding his firstborn, Hanabi is better than this. You're a disgrace to yourself and this clan, and even more. Hinata was desperately trying to stand and had finally made it to her feet. Hiashi was still angry, but he decided to keep the next comment to himself, even though he knew that the next few words that were going to come from his mouth were cold. And he didn't desire to put his daughter through that kind of torment. Give up, Hinata, I'm done, Hiashi stated, and he turned around and began to walk off. You've disappointed me, go back to your room and continue your studies. Hinata slumped over after her father left the room. She could barely move, but that didn't stop the tears from running down her face. I'm a failure was the only thought that crossed her mind, why would Naruto ever want me? Naruto had been walking past the dojo when he heard her sobbing, and his curiosity forced him to open the door. What he saw broke his heart. Hinata was curled up in a ball on the floor, crying into her own arms. She hadn't even noticed him enter when she felt his hand on her shoulder. Instinctively, she tried to flee, to get away from whoever had seen her there, but she hadn't even made it to her feet when Naruto pulled her down into his arms and held her there. Let me go, Hinata sobbed into his chest, still forcing her eyes closed, please, just let me go. No, Naruto replied softly. Her sobs died instantly. Naruto, she whispered, her sadness being replaced by embarrassment and need to go. No, the boy stated once again, firmly holding her in place. Please, please, Naruto. I will, but first listen to what I have to say. The young girl nodded her head in response. I'm not smart, Hinata, the boy began, but I'm not stupid. I want you to tell me what happened. Your stutter disappeared a year and a half ago, something serious happened to bring it back. Tell me, Hinata-chan, please. He began to loosen his hold on her, but instead of breaking from his arms, Hinata wrapped her own around him, pushing aside her feelings of embarrassment. Father is usually very strict and hard on me in our training, but today he was much worse. I think I did something to make him mad. Nothing could have been bad enough to deserve what he did to you, Naruto interrupted, seeing her smaller body was covered with bruises where chakra was forced through her skin. I don't know what I did, but father was angry. He completely overwhelmed me, and after it was over, he called me a disgrace. Naruto felt his respect for Hiashi waver, he couldn't believe he would do that to Hinata, no matter what his reasons. I don't care what your father thinks, Naruto replied to her after a moment of silence, in my eyes, you will never be a disgrace. It was a lucky thing Hinata had wrapped her arms around her crush, if she hadn't, there was little doubt in her mind that he would have been oblivious to her affections. Her face felt like it was on fire, and her heart felt like it was flying, suddenly her father's opinion seemed inconsequential. Hiashi had been coming to check in on his brother's training session with Hinata when he overheard the conversation between Hinata and Naruto, and he was both disappointed and pleased at the same time. Disappointed in his brother for his lack of understanding and brutal methods, and pleased at the growth of Hinata and Naruto's relationship. Even if they don't end up together, Hiashi thought to himself, those two will be best friends for life. After the obvious climax of the conversation, the branch house head made his way to his brother's quarters. Someone had to put the man in his place. Hours had passed since the incident, and Naruto found himself drawn to his usual thinking spot, but this time he wasn't alone. Hinata sat beside him on the rooftop just above his room, taking in the magnificent night sky. Naruto-kun, Hinata whispered, catching his attention, "Thank you for earlier." "Don't worry about it, Hinata-chan," the blonde replied, "I just find it difficult seeing you without a smile on your face." Hinata couldn't help but blush, and Naruto couldn't help but be completely oblivious to the situation. "You're my best friend, Hinata-chan," Naruto continued, "and it's really hard to see you sad." "I understand, Naruto-kun," Hinata replied, "you're my best friend too." He smiled at her for a moment, his eyes reflecting how deeply he appreciated her, saying that before his gaze returned to the night sky. The next few weeks that went by were rather uneventful, save the constant curiosity about Naruto and his sudden reappearance. No one ever asked him where he'd gone though, his Hyuga-like responses were enough. While there were a select few that managed to actually bring themselves to talk to Naruto, he usually just glared at them. He did what was expected of him, as a Hyuga. Naruto began to loosen up as the school year went on, as did Hiashi about the two keeping the Hyuga appearance. He showed more of himself in class and even began talking to some of his classmates. Before he knew it, there were a few girls attempting to ask him out, but he was so oblivious to it that their constant hinting did nothing but confuse him. In the end, there were two major fan clubs among the girls at school. The Naruto fan club and the Sasuke fan club. As the months went on, the tests at the academy got steadily harder, and eventually Naruto was forced to get Hinata's assistance in studying. During what free time they had, the two were constantly in the books, even if it caused Naruto to get a bit of a headache at times. It was either that or suffer more from Hiashi-sama's discipline. Naruto found the constant headache to be much more preferable. Eventually, the school year came to a close and it was time for the final exams. "Alright, the final exams consist of 3 basic courses," Iruka stated, calming the class down, taijutsu, ninjutsu, and throwing, and accuracy. "In a few moments, I will lead you to your first destination, but before we begin, I need to go over the details of the courses." All eyes were on Iruka now, hanging on to his every word. "Throwing and accuracy will require you to hit the target at least 8 times out of 10. The better your accuracy, the higher your point total. This same concept goes for taijutsu and ninjutsu as well. The better your performance, the higher your point total. If you fail to reach a certain overall score, you fail. If you fail 2 or more of the courses, you fail. The taijutsu portion of these courses will pit you against one of the senseis here. You are to do everything in your power to overpower us." Several of the students gave him nervous glances. "Don't worry about us fighting back, we will be purely on defense. Whether you overcome us or not doesn't really matter, it's your performance that we're looking for. And last, but not least will be the ninjutsu portion, which will be revealed to each of you individually as you enter the chambers to take the exam." Iruka studied the faces around the room, many of them he knew would pass, but several others were questionable at best. "Now if you will please follow me." Iruka turned and walked towards the door and smiled at his students as they came to join him. Many of them wore determination on their faces, those were the ones he was certain would pass. "So these are the genin hopefuls, huh?" A man with a headband covering his eyes asked as Iruka approached him, "Look like a bunch of nervous wrecks if you ask me." "They are," Iruka replied, taking his place beside the man, "but you can't really blame them." "True enough." The man walked up to Iruka's class and motioned for them to halt. "My name is Higoku Jinta," the man stated, "and I will be the judge of your throwing and accuracy exam." The man lifted his headband to reveal coal black eyes. "When I call your name, you will take your place up at the throwing line and choose 10 projectiles. All of them are top quality, I can assure you, and are razor sharp, so try not to lose any fingers." The class slowly dwindled down as their names were called, many of them passing, save a few exceptions. "Uruno Sakura," the coal-eyed sensei called out, "please take your place at the throwing line." The pink-haired girl nervously walked up to the line and stared down her target. "You get 1 practice throw," the man continued, offering her his plate of projectiles. One swift movement and a quiet thunk and Sakura's worried expression fell from her face, she hit the target. Finally, with a look of resolve, she took all 10 of the weapons in her hands and began throwing them. The steady thing continued until she threw the last of her weapons, when it hit the wood, it bounced off instead. "I'm afraid I'm going to have to count that as a miss, young lady," Jinta stated as he took his place beside her. "If you can't throw it hard enough to stick it in the target, it can't be counted as a hit." Sakura made her way back over to the class, but her final miss didn't get her down, she did hit 9 out of 10, after all. "Hyuga, Hinata," the man continued, "if you would please take your place." Hinata, for the most part, looked like she was going to faint, a lot was riding on her passing her exams. As she began to trot over to the line, she felt a hand on her shoulder and looked back to see a smiling Naruto. "You can do this, Hinata-chan," he stated, his total faith in the blue-haired girl. That was all Hinata needed. She continued to the line and, after a quick practice throw, she proceeded to land shuriken after shuriken in the red and yellow parts of the target. By the time Hinata had finished, Iruka was wearing a smile. Not only had she taken to the exercise with gusto, but he saw Naruto giving her words of encouragement. He was happy to see her come so far. It appeared as though the blonde-haired Hyuga was having a good impact on her after all. "Hyuga, Naruto," Jinta stated, turning his eyes to the blonde. Naruto began his trek to the line immediately. "I don't really want to practice throw, sensei," Naruto commented, taking the 10 kunai in his hands. "Very well, you may begin whenever you're ready." One by one the kunai began to connect with the target and by the end of it, the proctor was wearing an amused expression. "Actually, sensei, can I have that practice throw after all?" The man handed Naruto another kunai, which Naruto immediately hurled at the target, hitting it directly in the middle and completing the kunai smiley face he had made. "Thanks, sensei," Naruto stated as he returned to the class. Iruka could only shake his head. At least it wasn't as bad as some of his older pranks. The rest of the exam was rather uneventful, at least until they reached Uchiha Sasuke, who managed to throw all 10 of his weapons at the same time and land them all in the bullseye. Eventually the exam was completed and Iruka began marching them off to their next destination. "This is where you'll be taking your taijutsu exam," a tanned kunoichi with black hair stated as the class fell into place in front of her. "You will be paired off with one of the senseis here at the academy and you will attempt to overcome them. They will not be fighting back, so you don't have to worry about getting seriously injured, but don't expect them to just take a beating either. You will be judged on how well you perform by the sensei you're paired off with. Any questions?" The class was silent. "Good. We will be pairing you off 5 at a time. That means that only 5 matches will be going on at one time," the woman stated, grabbing a box from the side of the room. "You will each draw a piece of paper from this box and proceed to the specified mat." The woman walked through the ranks of students, each of them drawing their own lot and proceeding off to the specified mat until she was left standing with Iruka. "So those two are in this class, huh?" she asked, staring at the backs of both Sasuke and Naruto. "Yeah," Iruka replied, walking up beside her, "and I have to say I've never seen a more promising class in my career." The woman smiled at Iruka. "You have the heirs of several clans in this year's class. It wouldn't surprise me if this is the best class ever to graduate from this school, but those two," she lifted her hand, motioning to Naruto and Sasuke, "those two are in a league of their own. You have 5 minutes to try to overwhelm me," a man with a few scars covering his face told the students in front of him. "If you are unable to land a single hit, you fail this portion of the exam. You will be fighting me one-on-one, so will," the man trailed off, looking at his roster. "Inuzuka, Kiba, please step forward." The match began immediately, but Naruto's attention was torn from the fight in front of him when he heard cheering from the students at the next mat over and saw Sasuke panting while the teacher in front of him was on one knee, coughing roughly. Sasuke must have landed a critical blow to get that kind of response, probably a gut shot. A few mats down he could see another teacher dodging and weaving as Hinata attempted to strike him. He couldn't help but smile at the seriousness on her face and the panicked look on the teacher's face. "Looks like someone forgot about the Jaiken," Naruto thought behind his smirk. Before he knew it, Naruto's name was called and he took his place in front of his teacher. "Begin whenever you're ready. I'll start the clock as soon as you attack." Naruto assumed his stance and it appeared as though a look of confusion followed shortly by realization crossed his teacher's face as he, too, assumed his stance. Byakugan. Naruto charged his opponent only for his first attack to be completely thwarted. As the instructor pushed his arm to the side, the blonde spun around and hooked his left leg behind that of his teacher's and pulled, sending him to the ground. "1," Naruto stated as his teacher was getting back up, but as he tried to regain his feet, he felt his left leg go numb. "This isn't going to end well," the teacher stated, holding his leg. 2, Naruto continued his count as he landed a glancing blow to his opponent's right forearm. "I wasn't expecting him to put up this much of a fight," the man thought to himself as he began weaving through Naruto's attacks. "I've never fought an academy student this well versed in taijutsu." 3, Naruto started after his fingers ran along the teacher's side. By now, the teacher was quite frustrated. Not only was he having trouble with his left leg and right arm, but now he was having trouble with his lungs. Hinata turned her gaze to Naruto's match, having just completed hers, when she saw it. Naruto moved too fast for her to see. He had covered 10 feet and landed a serious blow to the teacher's stomach in less than the blink of an eye. But that Hinata whispered to herself, it's the same as that time. She barely remembered when Naruto had first joined the Hyuga household and even less the time before it, but now, after all the time they'd known each other, she remembered his short fight with the Uchiha. The proctor, on the other hand, felt like he was trying to move through water, his arms felt heavy, he was having trouble breathing, and his legs felt like jelly. You're within the realm of my divination, the blonde stated coldly, assuming a unique stance and facing his instructor. I can't stop his next attack, should I call the match? The instructor thought to himself as Naruto began his charge, no pride won't let me. Only one other option then. As Naruto was about to begin his attack, he felt the air leave his lungs, the instructor had attacked him. He began to back up, still holding his stomach and trying not to fall when he heard the sensei breathe a sigh of relief. That was stupid of me, Naruto thought to himself, fighting to catch his breath, I shouldn't have let my guard down like that. No doubt Hiashi-sama's going to use this against me. The smirk crossed Naruto's face as his bearing returned to him. What are you smiling at? The instructor asked, a cold demeanor surrounding him. The Hiashi-mama's gonna have a field day with this one. Naruto stated as he began walking towards the teacher, you landed a blow on me that was foolish on my part. The instructor began to worry a bit as the grin on Naruto's face turned to a full-blown smirk. I forgot that the best defense any ninja has ever come up with has been filled with offensive maneuvers, as well. I forgot to look beneath the shadows. By now the teacher was slowly backing up, the smirk on Naruto's face had turned slightly maniacal. I haven't had this much fun in a long time. Shall we continue, sensei? The instructor nodded slowly and Naruto bolted after him. Had the teacher thought he was at a disadvantage before, he now knew Naruto had been trying to keep it slightly professional, in other words, he was holding back. 6, Naruto counted quietly as the man felt chakra enter his body from his side. A few seconds later he heard another whisper from the blonde, this one sounded like 12. He started getting worried as his body stopped responding properly and that was when he realized it. He was scared. This Hyuga was purposefully counting quietly so he would strain to hear what he said, and each time he heard a number, he wondered where he'd been hit. Little by little he began to fear for his safety as his body became less and less responsive. The boy was playing on his fears as well as his knowledge, but as Naruto continued his onslaught, the instructor heard something that completely erased his fears. The timer. Very good, Hyuga, the man stated as Naruto walked over and began unsealing him. You're very talented in the area of taijutsu, probably more so than someone your age should be. Thank you, sensei, Naruto replied as he continued his work. A moment later, the man stretched his aching muscles before calling the next student to the mat. It seems you're right, Miharu, Iruka commented towards the black-haired Kunoichi, continuing their previous conversation. Those two really are in a league of their own. Alright, when I called your name, file into the classroom to complete the ninjutsu portion of this exam, Iruka called out to the waiting students. Slowly, the classroom began to empty as students were called to complete the final test of the exam. Hyuga Hinata, a man with silver hair called out after opening the door to the examination room. The young heiress did her part to look as neutral as possible while walking down the stairs, but inside she was nothing but butterflies. This was a defining moment. After a few moments, the silver-haired man once again opened the door, Hyuga, Naruto, the blonde stood and began his trek down to the room, as well. Alright, Naruto, Iruka stated while examining the papers in front of him, you are required to use Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin no Jutsu in order to pass this part of the exam. For Henge, I need you to transform into Mizuki-sensei over there, and for Bunshin, I need you to make at least 3 acceptable clones. Naruto, for the most part, did his best to look unfazed as he replaced himself with a chair on the opposite side of the room and then turned into the silver-haired man guarding the door, but the last was something he knew he didn't quite grasp. But something Hiashi had stated months prior rang in his head. Something about too much chakra. Sensei, Naruto stated as he prepared for the technique, you said at least 3 clones, right? Iruka nodded in the affirmative, is there a maximum? Well no, I guess not. Why do you ask? Iruka replied, seeing a mischievous glint in Naruto's eyes that he knew all too well. Might I step outside for this part of the exam, sensei? It's a little small here. Iruka visibly paled but nodded once again. Naruto jumped out the window of the room, landing safely outside before initiating the. But where the minimum was 3 and there was no maximum allotted, Iruka still hadn't expected that many. Very good, Naruto, Iruka stated, giving up counting after he hit 30, you pass. As Naruto passed through the door on the other side of the room, he collected his hit I-8 and was immediately tackled into a hug. You did it, Naruto-kun. Hinata practically squeaked. And you did too, I see, Naruto added after hugging her back. I'm so happy. Hinata continued, closing her eyes as she held Naruto tighter. "We're both genin now." Hinata didn't notice or didn't care, but half of the girls in the room were looking on in envy. Right now, he was hers, and the other girls didn't stand a chance. "Knowing that I'm very proud of the two of you," Hiashi stated, a smile gracing his lips, "I'm confident both of you will make fine shinobi." "Thank you, Hiashi-sama," the two replied in unison, bowing their heads. "Remember, the pride of the Hyuga clan rests on your shoulders." "So," Neji stated as he swiftly evaded a strike to his chest, "you've finally graduated." Naruto blocked the counter-strike and made to breach Neji's guard. It was actually disappointing the graduation exam. Neji quickly countered Naruto's counter and sealed in his abdomen. Without missing a beat, Naruto quickly sealed off one of the in Neji's offending forearm. "Touché," Neji replied, balling his left hand into a fist. "No use trying with an arm that can't exert chakra." "But what gets me," Naruto continued, attempting to parry and counter a flurry of punches and kicks, "is that it was too easy. No one in our class failed. I don't think that was the real test." Neji swiped the blonde's feet out from under him, but as he was falling, Naruto hooked his left leg behind Neji's right, effectively forcing the Hyuga prodigy alongside him. "You let your guard down," Neji commented, lifting himself from the ground. "You did too," the blonde replied with a smirk. "Anyway," Neji continued, drifting to their previous subject, "I can't exactly tell you what to expect from here. You might be put through another test, you might not. I kinda figured you'd say something like that." The blonde sighed, defeated, "Guess I'll find out soon enough, huh?" Neji smiled at his blonde companion, "Only time will tell. You'd best prepare for dinner, Hiashi-sama will punish both of us if we show up looking like this." At night, Naruto found it difficult to sleep and, after a fit of tossing and turning, found himself seated in a familiar spot on the manor's rooftop. "I knew I'd find you here," Hinata's soft voice penetrated the silence. "I take it you couldn't sleep either." "You know me too well," Naruto replied, a smile gracing his features. He stared into the night sky and briefly considered counting the stars. Nights like this were probably going to be few and far in between as soon as he began going on missions. Part of him was nervous about finally getting one step closer to his dream, but with that nervousness came excitement that enveloped it threefold. Who knew what the future had in store for him? Whatever it was, he was willing to tackle it head-on. So Naruto began after a few minutes of silence. "Does it look good?" Hinata puzzled over Naruto's question for a moment before she faced him. Immediately she smiled, he was talking about his 8, which was currently tied around his forehead. "Hi, it does," the heiress applied. It was true, too, it really did suit quite well, though it gave him a bit more of a refined look. Hinata enjoyed the more wild look that his bangs gave him without the headband. "Hey, Hinata-chan." "Yes, Naruto-kun." A brief moment passed between the two. "We did it." "Yeah." The two talked for nearly an hour before Hinata stifled a yawn. "Sleepy?" Naruto asked rhetorically. "No." Hinata was quick to respond before she was attacked by another yawn. Naruto grinned at the blushing girl, he knew she was just trying to make an excuse to sit on the roof with him, but even he could tell that she was about to pass out. "You should really head to bed, Hinata-chan." "I'm not tired at all, promise," Hinata whispered out, leaning her head on Naruto's shoulder. "Not tired, huh?" Naruto's face bore an expression of obvious disbelief. It didn't matter what he or she thought though, her snores were now drowning out any reply he could think of. "Wow, she even snores politely." Naruto chuckled to himself, noting how quiet her snores were. "Guess I'd better." Naruto paused when he noticed a strange figure on an adjacent rooftop several hundred yards away. "You're not Anbu," the blonde stated quietly as he activated his Byakugan. Naruto could make out the man's face in excruciating detail and wasn't oblivious to the man's wide eyes and lip movements. Naruto decided to hold on to the phrase that came out of the intruder's mouth, it was very colorful. Before Naruto knew it, the man had traveled a great distance away from him, obviously making his way out of the village. Naruto only had one thought in mind. Hiashi was not going to like this wake-up call. "Hiashi-sama." Naruto practically yelled as he turned the corner to the Hyuga leader's room. Hiashi saw. The blonde was stopped as he noticed a gathering of branch shinobi outside Hiashi's quarters. He was going to try breaking through their ranks, but after hearing a few comments, many of them about the man he had seen, he decided against it. It was foolish of him to think that the guards wouldn't have noticed the intruder. "Silence," Hiashi ordered. Immediately the hall went quiet. "I understand there was an intruder, and I understand that he was heavily equipped. I even understand that he retreated too fast to have been any lower than Jounin status. What I don't understand is why not a single person here saw his face." Looks of failure passed over several of the guards, while many more simply wore the same stoic expression they'd had on since Naruto had arrived. No one here saw the intruder's face. Hiashi double-checked, annoyance plaguing his voice. I did. The entire group turned around to see Naruto standing behind them. Aside from being so preoccupied that they hadn't noticed him, the majority of the guards seemed unfazed. You saw the man's face, Naruto? Hiashi asked, a smile playing over his features. After a brief nod from the blonde, Hiashi bid the guards return to their stations and to keep their Byakugan active. Naruto, Hiashi began, as he escorted the blonde to his study. What are you even doing awake at this hour? I couldn't sleep, Hiashi-sama, the boy replied, so I was stargazing on the roof with Hinata-chan when I noticed him. Hiashi cocked an eyebrow at the boy. She kinda fell asleep on me, Naruto chuckled as he moved his right hand to rub the back of his head, so I was about to take her to her room, and well. I see, the elder Hyuga responded, I hate to do this to you, seeing as tomorrow is your first official day as a genin, but I'm going to need you to describe the man to the Hokage. Hi, Hiashi-sama. The Hokage stared at the hengoed version of Naruto for several moments after the scritching of the artist beside him came to a halt. And you're certain that this is what the man looked like? The Hokage clarified, taking a large puff from his pipe. Hi, Hokage-sama. I was about to head inside when I noticed him on a rooftop several hundred yards away. The Hokage chuckled at the thought. Had anyone said that other than a Hyuga he would have slapped his forehead. But he quickly noticed me. I'm not sure if he felt the chakra I'd used to activate my Byakugan or not, but after spotting my gaze, he muttered the phrase the Hokage, and clan heads' mouths dropped at the words that came out of the blonde's mouth and turned around. And fled to the western gates. Naruto fought to suppress his laughter at the looks the two leaders were giving him, but instead decided to point it out to them. Are you okay, Hiashi-sama? Hokage-sama? The two snapped out of their stupor quickly. Yes, I'm fine, the Sandame supplied. I would suggest never using that phrase again. Hi, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied mechanically, knowing full well that the Hokage hadn't ordered him not to, and planned on taking advantage of that. Naruto, Hiashi gave the boy a stern look, I'm going to have to ask that you not repeat anything you saw or discussed tonight to anyone. Hi, Hiashi-sama. Now, I would suggest you follow the house guards to the compound. You've got a busy day ahead of you tomorrow. Are you not coming with us, Hiashi-sama? No, the Hokage and I have a bit more to discuss. Have a good night, Naruto. I will have Hinata come and get you should you sleep in. Naruto bowed at the waist before he turned and exited the chambers. After a few moments, and spotting Naruto and the branch guards heading back to the compound, Hiashi turned to continue his discussion with the Hokage. The man he described, the younger man began, do we have any records of him in our bingo book? Surprisingly, no, the Hokage replied, setting his pipe down and walking up to the clan head, someone who was able to not only slip past our barriers and get past our guards, but managed to avoid the sight of more than one Byakugan. And detect the use of another would have to be a high jounin status ninja. I have no idea why he wouldn't be in our books. What if he wasn't a ninja at all? Hiashi replied, staring at the Hokage monument, it is possible he received training in the ninja arts without ever joining the program. Not likely. We are one of the few villages that will allow our ninja trainees to quit and become civilians. Most other villages would sooner execute their ninjas than allow someone with training to walk around freely. I see, Hiashi began, but was interrupted when Naruto burst through the doors, much to the protest of the guards and secretary. What is it, Naruto? The Hokage asked, seeing the panicked look on the blonde's face. Sorry, old man, Naruto replied through huffs of breath, completely forgetting his manners. I forgot to mention something about the man. Naruto hit his knees, panting for breath before standing up again. Didn't realize I was that tired, the blonde noted to himself. What is it, Naruto? Hiashi stated. When he was running away I noticed something strange about his chakra. The blonde continued, catching his breath. It was an odd color and seemed to be flowing through his arms and legs in a sort of erratic pattern. What color was it, Naruto? The Hokage asked, getting a better picture of who the man was. Almost white. But I could still see a tinge of blue. The Hokage's eyes widened significantly before returning to their normal size. Thank you, Naruto, Hiashi replied before ushering the boy out of the room. Now you should head to bed. It wasn't a suggestion. Hi, Hiashi-sama. Once again the two waited for the blonde to get out of sight before they continued their conversation. That explains how he got through the barrier, the Hokage theorized. If he were to stand beside it and create a clone, it could create it on the other side of the barrier if the proper amount of chakra is put into it. But then why was the man's chakra so erratic? Hiashi asked, unfamiliar with that specific chakra pattern. It was a lightning clone, the Hokage stated simply, and seeing as the clone had an almost white chakra, though still slightly saturated with blue, it narrows down our search significantly. Why is that? Only one clan in the elemental nations is known to have that specific chakra color. Anbu. Three Anbu decked themselves from the Hokage's walls and stood before their leader. Get me as much information as you can on the Konda clan from Kumagakure. I need to know if they've had any members disappear on missions lately or if any went rogue. You have your orders. The Anbu quickly disappeared from the room. Let's hope nothing comes of this. Naruto Hinata whispered into his ear as he lay on his bed, out like a light. Naruto-kun, it's time to wake up. Don, one of the blonde mumbled as he rolled over. Naruto-kun. Hinata sighed. This was proving more of a task than she thought it'd be. She was currently on her knees with her elbows holding her up on the bed. She reached her arm over to his shoulder and shook him slightly. Naruto-kun, we've got to head to the academy soon. Father asked me to wake you so you could have breakfast. Naruto mumbled for a moment before he tried to fight her shaking by pushing his right arm against her. She flushed a deep red as his hand made contact. Naruto, for his part, was having a very good dream concerning himself and an all-you-can-eat ramen buffet at Ichiraku's, at least until, for some reason, he stuck his right arm in it. Squishy, Naruto thought to himself, wondering why he was touching it and not eating it. Eep. Naruto's eyes flashed open. Ramen doesn't keep, he stated out loud, turning his head to his right arm. There, on the other end of his right hand, was a brilliant shade of red that was in the shape of Hinata, and then he noticed where his hand was. Naruto quickly turned the same shade of red as Hinata and attempted to sputter out an apology, only to say something completely indiscernible from unintelligible banter. Hanabi, in all her infinite wisdom, took this opportunity to burst in on them to see what was taking so long. What she came upon, however, left her with more questions than she could ever think to voice. Sitting on the floor facing each other were Hinata and Naruto, the former a bright red, poking her fingers together and shifting uncomfortably, while the latter was a deep shade of red, playing with his thumbs with his eyes shifting uncomfortably side to side. Father says to hurry up, the food's getting cold, Hanabi stated, completely confused. Hi. The two chorused, even with a stutter. Hanabi felt her confusion grow. See you down there. She left before she could think any more about it, if only to save herself. I'm sorry about that, Hinata-chan, Naruto practically whispered, still staring at his hands. It's okay, Naruto-kun, the younger girl replied, for one stuttering less than Naruto. Anyway, let's go before father decides to come get us himself. Naruto's face flushed slightly pale at the thought of Hinata's father discovering the two. There was no doubt in his mind that Hiashi would demand to know what happened, and it was this knowledge that fueled Naruto as he got dressed faster than he had ever before. And dragged a blushing Hinata behind him. I'm surprised Hiashi-sama didn't ask why we were so late to breakfast, Naruto pondered out loud as the two walked to the academy. I'm thankful he didn't ask, Hinata blushed brightly at the memory. I'm really sorry about that, Hinata-chan, the blonde apologized for the 20th time that morning. It's okay, Naruto-kun, she replied, then smiled deviously, something that frightened the blonde. I'll just have to repay the favor someday. Naruto paled slightly. Recently his wilder side had been rubbing off on the heiress, and that scared him to no end. He knew his pranks were sometimes dangerous, and some of them could be considered along the lines of partially suicidal if the desired outcome was denied, like the first time he'd snuck into the Uchiha compound and set paint bombs to go off when the door to the clan compound was opened. Naruto was lucky he was talented with the leave no trace concept. Hinata couldn't help but laugh at the face Naruto was making. It was a strange mix of pride, worry, and absolute horror. She was going to enjoy this. I'm glad at least one of us is enjoying this, Naruto stated blandly. Naruto, Hinata. The two looked around for the voice calling them and were greeted by Nara Shikamaru. While Shikamaru was, majority of the time, lazy, he, like everyone, had a few distinct things that motivated him, one of which had been Naruto's pranks while they were growing up, making him close friends with both Naruto and Hinata. How's it going, Shika? Naruto had given up on calling the genius by his full name shortly after they had become friends, and Shikamaru had given up on having Naruto address him by his full name soon after something about it being too troublesome. Pretty good. Chaoji's parents needed to talk to him for a while. Mind if I walk with you guys? Of course, Hinata replied. He noticed Naruto pale as she glanced his way. What happened between the two of you? He dared ask. There was an incident this morning when she woke me up, Naruto informed his friend, his eyes never leaving Hinata's, but both of them turning slightly red, and she's promised to repay me for it. Hinata grinned at the blonde, and Shikamaru burst out laughing as the blonde paled further. I'd keep my guard up, Naruto, Shika replied, she'll probably strike when you least expect it. I know that, Naruto replied, and that's the problem. We live together. How am I supposed to sleep at night? Very restlessly. Naruto let out a small whimper as he turned his gaze forward. This is not going to end well for me at all. Alright class, settle down, Haruka commanded as he entered the room. It's time we separated you into teams. The class seemed to calm down a bit until finally he had their full attention. As Genin, you will be operating in 3-man cells under the command of the Jounin. There are several reasons for this, but all you need to know is it's for instructional purposes, the man continued, after a select number of missions completed successfully. Your instructor may give the application for Chunin. Once you have become Chunin, you will remain in your 3-man cells as a base, but more often than not, you will be included in missions where you may lead as many as 12 Chunin and Genin alike. After you've made it to Jounin, you will either be included in joint operation missions, working alone, or taking over a Genin team, as well as being applicable for every position that a Chunin would. He soon realized he had the class's full attention. You may have finally achieved your goal of becoming a ninja, but you are still on the bottom of the charts. Only through time, experience, and backbreaking training will you reach the heights of Jounin and Anbu. Iruka nodded his head at the students, but before you can do any of that, you must first meet your teammates and instructor. Now, when I call the names for each team, please take a seat next to your new teammates. Flashback. Okage-sama, are you sure this is such a good idea? Iruka asked, his head spinning. Yes, I'm certain, Sandaime replied, your ideas for teams were excellent, but unfortunately, a new bit of evidence had sprung forth and forced me to change your designs for teams. You may handle them as you see fit, but the cells are set. But, sir. This throws off the teams to an incredible extent. No, Iruka, you need to look at each of your students individually and stop looking at their families. My formations are not flawed and you students will prove themselves. Have faith in them. Hi, Hokage-sama. Then flashback. Teams 1 through 6, Iruka stated as he finished calling out Team 6, you are to head to the training grounds, your Jounin instructors will meet you there. Mizuki-sensei will be waiting for you. When they had filed out of the classroom, only 9 students were left and Iruka ushered them to the front rows. Is something wrong, sensei? Ino, a blonde-haired girl wearing purple, asked, seeing the worry on his face. No, and yes. Yes, and no. Sasuke asked, his onyx eyes boring into Iruka's, what do you mean? Alright, I was requested by the Hokage himself to relay this information to you, so Kiba, a boy with brown hair and red face paint, lifted his head up. Shikamaru, the boy tried his hardest not to doze off, and everyone else, I need your undivided attention. The room quickly became silent and shuffling ceased and they stared into their sensei's eyes. Last night, Konoha was infiltrated, the scarred man began, by an operative from Kumagakure. Iruka waited for an outburst but quickly discovered that it wasn't coming, they must realize how serious this is. The Hokage is currently unaware of the intentions of this operative, he looked directly at Naruto and shifted his gaze to Hinata, but we have our guesses. This infiltration is one step shy of forcing Konoha on a warpath. This time there were collective gasps. However, being that we don't have conclusive evidence for this, our village is currently on high alert, though we aren't expecting another attempt for several months. This information and hypothesis has demanded a reorganization of scheduled teams. Originally we had planned to turn U9 into a combat team, a tracker team, and an assault team, but the Hokage has deemed it necessary to have other precautions taken. We don't know what Kumo was after, but we think they want our bloodlines. Naruto didn't flinch, having assumed this himself, but Hinata placed her hand on his arm and squeezed, remembering the assault on her younger sister a few years prior. Therefore, I have been given the order to place you in teams the Hokage has chosen. Many in the group now wore nervous expressions, it wasn't often the Hokage rearranged the teams to his liking. Team 7 consisted of Inyazuka Kiba, Uchiha Sasuke, and Yamanaka Ino. There was no arguing and no cheering, only the shuffle of feet as the three took seats beside each other. Team 8 will include Nara Shikamaru, Hyuga Naruto, and Hyuga Hinata. More shuffling of feet. Team 10 will have Aburame Shino, Akamichi Chouji, and Haruno Sakura. My apologies, sensei, a pink-haired girl piped up, but isn't it a little odd to have 2 Hyugas on the same team? It won't really matter who's on whose team actually, a man with silver hair commented while 2 others joined him in the front of the classroom, because you'll all be training together. The assignment of the teams is currently a formality. The man nodded to Iruka and paced back and forth in front of the students. I see why the old man decided on these ones. A man with black hair and a cigarette in his mouth whispered to the woman beside him. I was a witness to their graduation exams. These 9 graduated at the top of their class ability-wise. But we haven't seen them in action yet, the silver-haired man replied quickly, his one visible eye shooting to each student before moving on to the next. This is a hit-or-miss affair, kids, you either do great or you die. Many of the students swallowed the lumps in their throats. You've been inducted into the High No Cage apprenticeship. For the next 3 months your lives are going to be a living hell, I promise. We will push you until you can't be pushed any farther, and then we'll push some more. You will learn all the ways of the shinobi, not just your fantasies, so if you're going to quit, don't waste my time. Quit now. The room stayed silent. You have 3 days. In 3 days you will be taken from your family and forced to live together in a base camp. You will have no outside contact, no letters, no friends coming to visit, nothing. You will learn to live and operate as a unit and as pieces of a whole. By the time we are done training you, you will be worthy of the title High No Cage. Thanks for watching my video, see you next time, till then sayonara.